Welcome back to the Growing Band Director Podcast. This is episode number 154. I'm really excited to be joining here in a couple minutes. Nicole Piunno. She's a composer out of Ohio. And I first heard about her a little over a year ago, and I was doing episode 58 with Ed Protzman, who's now at the collegiate level, but at the time he was at William Mason University in Cincinnati, Ohio. And they were performing one of Nicole's pieces at Midwest, her take on Amazing Grace, which is called Safely Rest. I fell in love with it, and I'm really excited to bring you her story, her thoughts and insights. You guys can get to know her really well. And then we're going to go through, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of her pieces, segments of it, and talk about them. They are from grade 1 all the way up through grade 6. So here's Nicole Piunno. Nicole, how are you? Thanks for being here.
I'm great. How are you?
Awesome. So like I mentioned everybody already, when I heard about Safely Rest was the first time that I heard your name. And that was a little while ago when I was talking to Ed Protzman before Midwest. So I know you've had a lot of pieces played, and that's not your only piece, of course. I just want to, we're going to listen to that in a little while. But first, I want to talk a little bit about your history and some other composer and school related things before we get into some of your pieces. So
Sure.
first, you're a trumpet player.
Yes.
And so can you tell us a little bit about your training as a composer, conductor, trumpet player, a little bit about you?
Well, my first degree is in education. So I went to school thinking I'd be a band director. And during that time, I really fell in love with music itself. I think before then, I loved the trumpet more than I loved music. And even a little bit into undergrad, I think I still loved the instrument more than music itself. But I fell in love with music and wanted to do everything. So I loved history, I loved theory, I loved teaching. I started writing music and taking composition lessons. I loved performing, especially in orchestra. So eventually you have to make a decision. If you love so many things, you can only really pick one. And I decided what would be next for me is a performance degree and I was going to go to University of Michigan. That was my top choice, and I was accepted with the hopes of being a professor and playing in an orchestra. However, I discovered a very severe lip injury had occurred, and I had to leave to get surgery in Canada, actually. So I left Michigan, and that was a time for me. And when I went back home for about 2 years to have the surgery and recover. And I started teaching during that time. And I found another teacher for composition. So that's all I could do was write. I couldn't play anything. So
sure.
Yeah, that was, so I started writing. I wrote my first wind ensemble piece during that time. And I was a substitute teacher.
Which piece was that?
Well, it's not known.
Okay.
I don't share that one, although there is a story with it. It is a piece now in a way. So it's called Be Still and Still Moving.
Okay.
I redid it many years later.
Got it.
I took the good parts of it, you know what I mean? And then redid it. So that was one of the hardest things I've ever done, actually, is to rework something that had already kind of existed.
And so were you always sort of on the music track? Like, did you know pretty early you wanted to go into music, or?
I knew my junior year in high school in an honor band, actually, is when I decided that was what I was going to do.
Cool. So you were at Michigan. What happened after that?
So that's when I went back to teach. And I took that piece that I mentioned, that first band piece. I wrote it as a gift to give to my band director. And before that, I had only written chamber music, really. I wasn't interested in the large ensemble for some reason yet. But I took it to David Gillingham. It was about a 5-hour drive from me, and got a lesson on it because I wanted it to be good. And I respected Gillingham's music at that time quite a bit. And he was drivable distance, so why not? And he suggested I go to school for composition, which I had not considered. So I eventually came around to the idea, and I decided to do it. So that's when I went to Michigan and did all of my other degrees after that.
So what degrees were those?
So I have two masters. I have one in composition from Central Michigan, and then I went straight to Michigan State and I got a second one in music theory, and then the doctorate ultimately in composition.
Awesome. So when did you sort of start your time as a full-time composer?
After I moved back. So I moved back with my all my degrees. I moved back to Ohio. Quite honestly, I don't know that I really started yet. I was a little confused on what I was wanting to do. Part of me thought I should be a theory professor. Part of me thought, no, I should do something else. And I was teaching it. I started teaching again. So I became a marching band, an assistant marching band director when I moved back. Um, and somewhere in the year or two after, I really committed to a life of being a writer. And that has only grown and confirmed that that was the right choice. But at the time, it was a difficult decision, I would say.
Sure. Um, what year was that?
So I got the doctorate in 2014. I had my first wind ensemble piece played. It was my dissertation. It won an award. I got that played in 2015
What piece
in
was that?
some through Wind and Whispers.
Okay.
Uh, Somewhere in between there and 2016 is when I really thought, "Yep, we're gonna do this."
So if you don't mind me asking, what award did it win?
Oh, it was a competition through Michigan State.
Great.
Yeah,
And is that a bit available for people to listen to?
it is. Yeah,
It is. Okay. Because that's not one we're going to look at today, right?
right.
So, all right.
Yeah.
And how do people, if they want to reach out and hear more of your music and dive more into your compositional world, how do they do that?
The best place would be my website, I would say, which is nicolepiunno.com. I do a YouTube channel as well. I try to put up some score videos from time to time if I can. So those are the two best places, I would say.
All right, let's talk about some recent things or highlights
Sure.
first. So, as
Yeah.
a composer, what are some of the highlights? I wrote down like I assume having a piece played at Midwest is considered a highlight, right?
I
Um,
would say so, yeah.
yeah. So, what are some of the highlights?
Yeah, so not this last year, is the year before, Mason High School. They're an Ohio school, about 2 hours from me. They performed Safely Rest at Midwest. This was my first time having a wind ensemble piece played at Midwest. Actually, I had a brass band piece the year before, but this was the first wind ensemble piece, and it was a great experience. I got to go to the high school first, and Richard Floyd was there. Both Floyds actually were there. They're beautiful people, and so the whole experience was wonderful because he was the one conducting the piece. And then I did it again at Midwest, and that was it was a very good experience for me. I'm so thankful they did it because people I knew the piece was special, but in order for it to take off, it needs to be heard. So um, since it was played there, I think it got to reach a lot of hearts and minds, and now it's being played pretty frequently, which I'm happy about. Um, some other I've had a good amount of highlights actually recently. So another one I would say, I think it was July, it was past July, the Marine Band played a piece, which as any composer would say, that's a highlight.
That's not too bad. Yeah.
That's not too bad. They played Bright Shadow Fanfare.
Okay.
And that, gosh, wow, that was you don't forget hearing that for the first time, played by a group like that. So that's most definitely a highlight. And they were just super kind to me. It was great. Um,
Can I just jump in really quick? You mentioned two
yeah,
pieces that I don't know yet. What's
sure.
the grade level of Bright Shadow Fanfare?
5 at least.
Okay. And then what about Through Wind and Whispers?
6.
6. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What else? I kind of cut you off there.
Another 6. So,
Yeah.
sorry, I promise I have lower levels too. In this last September, my biggest work to date. It's called Sunflower Studies. It's a symphony for wind ensemble in 5 movements, and Arizona State led the commission on that one, and they premiered it, and it was just couldn't have asked for a better premiere, a better experience. They're wonderful people out there. He gave me a chance. Jason Kasler, he is the conductor. He gave me a chance to do something I've wanted to do for quite some time now, which was write something with out restriction, something that I really wanted to do, a major work. And that's what the piece ended up being. And it was such a good experience. Can't speak highly enough about it.
And we're going to check it out here as we come up a little bit. So is there something you're working on now that you're really excited about?
I am about to start working on. I've been traveling a lot. I've been in airports more than home the last month. So I haven't been writing this month, but I have a list of things I need to do, which is actually some grade ones and twos coming up here, which I haven't done a lot of in the last 6 or so years.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, I wrote a ton, but I haven't done a lot of that recently. So I'm about to dive into that. One is it's known now. Uh, it's going to be a grade ones. I'm only doing 2 of them this year, but it's going to be a grade 1 band with advanced or pro level soloist. So that's the
Awesome.
first thing I need to start doing, which is
Awesome.
going to be a challenge. But it's a challenge I'm willing and excited to see how it goes, how to take it on.
Are you 100% self-published?
Basically, so I have a distributor.
Okay.
Murphy Music Press is the one doing my printing and takes orders for me.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the commission process. Some things band directors can do when commissioning a piece or communicating with a composer to help the process. And I just wanted to mention recently, Andre Wilkins and Kirk Vogel did an episode that we put on, episode 148, that was all about the commissioning process. So for somebody listening, maybe for the first time, whether they're reaching out to you or another composer, what are some things from the composer side that you're looking for?
Yeah, I guess it could go 2 ways. So some commissions, it's one school or one group commissioning you, and you are writing for that group, and they're the ones fully funding the project, and they're the ones giving the premiere. And then there are times where multiple schools will fund a project, so or we call them a consortium, and multiple people pay in. It lowers the cost for everybody. Sometimes there's still a group that's leading it, so typically they're the ones that premiere the piece. But just in terms of setting something up, it's important to know which route you're going to take with it. So let's say somebody's reaching out and they are just one group that wants a very specific piece. I appreciate it when they tell me what kind of budget they're dealing with from the start, so I know, and so that's an important part of the conversation. How long the piece, what they would like, the grade level of the piece. Is there a reason they want me to write it? Sometimes it's for retirement or an occasion, and sometimes, and quite honestly, some of my favorite things are when people just reach out and say, we want to write, or we want you to write a piece. We just want to commission a new piece of music, and we want to be the ones to help bring that into creation. And it's not necessarily for anything specific. I know I like that personally. I like them all, and so I'm always willing to listen and try to help create something that would be beneficial to everyone.
It does make sense that the more freedom you have, that's a good thing.
It can be, yeah. I like it. Restrictions. There's nothing wrong with restrictions. Wasn't it Stravinsky or someone who said I need to know my restrictions before I could start or something? Like, I mean, they're like, it's just I need to know which sandbox I'm playing in, And I like the freedom personally. I feel like I can put my own restrictions on it if I needed to, if that would help me in some way. But yeah, I mean, I like it when a piece is just, it can be free to be what it wants to be, and it's not forced. I think
And
that's what I like about it.
I assume that usually band directors will tell you about their ensemble, like what sections are strong, what sections are weak, so you can make it fit their group.
In that case, if it's like one group commissioning it, yeah, I would want to definitely know things like that.
There's sure. One of my good friends is Andy Boysen, and he wrote a piece called Conversations with the Night, and there's this huge bass clarinet solo. So everybody asked him, like, why is there this like extended bass clarinet solo? Well, the band he wrote it for had 6 bass clarinets in his band of 80, and like 5 of them were all staters or something like that. So, sometimes there's a story behind these things on the piece.
Yeah.
Who are some other composers that maybe you're friends with or that you just really admire currently that you want to put their name out there?
Sure. They're known, so people will probably recognize these names. The first one that comes to mind is Aaron Perrine. I think he writes beautiful music, and he's starting to write, at the grade 2 in 1 level. I've seen from him
Hmm.
lately as well, which is nice. I did a piece of his at an art band called Earthshine. It's a grade 2 recently. James David, I have a lot of respect for him. I think his music is well crafted, and both of these people are cool human beings. I love
Hmm.
them both. They're nice, they're kind, and their music, I share something with them in that I think I have a lot of subtlety in my music, and I think both of them have a lot of subtlety in their music. And personally, I think it's something that's not as appreciated in our current situation. I think
Sure.
it's not as appreciated as it could be and should be. The idea of subtlety and layers and depth to
Mhm.
the music itself. So I have a lot of respect for those two guys.
That's awesome. Aaron Perrine, I don't know if he knows me, but I know him through Timothy Marr. Um,
Oh, okay.
so yeah, I forget what piece we did of his. Oh shoot, I'm not prepared for this. We did it at Allstate in Maine a bunch of years ago. It's Temperance. That's
Oh
it.
yes, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's a great piece.
It's a good one.
Um, do you know they both have websites where people can
Yes,
find their stuff?
definitely. Hmm.
Great, awesome. All right, how about some pieces of band literature that inspire you?
I will never get tired of hearing Southern Harmony by Donald Grantham. I think that always makes me smile, that piece. Um, I love The Winds of Nagal by Coalgrass, and just think it's very interesting. Keeps my attention. I love it. Oh, Magnum Mysterium,
Hmm.
Lauritton. Don't get tired of that one. Those are the ones that come to mind the quickest. I know early on I liked Emblems by Copeland. I haven't
Yeah.
heard it in a really long time though, but I remember connecting with that piece many, many years ago as well.
Are there maybe, and this is a question off the top of my head, are there any composers that maybe younger band directors or people maybe you don't know about that were great composers that still have amazing music? For example, Claire Grundmund, people that are a little bit more old school that people might not know about?
I'm surprised. I've gone places and done honor bands or whatever, and the students will ask me questions. And somehow David Gillingham comes up because he played a big role in my life. And I'll ask if they've ever played a piece by him, and I'm always surprised that a lot of them don't raise their hand. Like they just haven't. That surprises me a little bit because he was a very popular composer when I was in high school. So I guess I'm getting older. um,
What are some
but yeah,
pieces of his that, so when you think of David Gillingham, I have some
mhm.
I've thought of. If people haven't listened to his music, what pieces?
The first piece of his that I really connected to, and I have to be honest, and I've told this to his face, so he knows. But and I hated it the first time I played it, was "Be Thou My Vision." But
Yep.
then I ended up absolutely loving it a year later. So that comes to mind first. His It's like a fanfare piece. What's it called? New Century Dawn. That was the first time I ever listened to a wind ensemble piece and thought, "This is this is really beautiful. This is great." Is that a good sign that just
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. That's a good thing. Yeah.
um, so those are the two that come to mind. He wrote one for Ohio State, and it uses I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I'll get back to you on that
But
one.
either way, people should go check out David Gillingham's music.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Sure.
Wonderful person, wonderful.
All right, so we're gonna dive into, speaking of great music, 7 of your pieces. And people are going to, if they're not watching on YouTube, if they jump over to YouTube at this timestamp or so, they're going to be able to see for some of it also the score and sound. So we're going to start from grade 1 and kind of go up. So we're going to start talking about spring fanfare. Since it's a fanfare, would you assume it's like the open air of a concert?
I would say so, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so tell us a little bit about it.
Um, this is one of my first grade ones, and I in all my young music, um, I'm always thinking education first. Definitely, you want it to be artistic. Anything I write, I want it to be artistic. But the younger the grade level, the more I'm thinking, what are they learning? What do they need to learn? How can I help them learn that? And so I'm really big on, well, tone first, but I'm also really big on articulation and style things. And so I definitely was thinking about articulation. I was definitely thinking about giving the low brass and the low reeds a good time with the melody at some point in there as well, and having it interplayed with each other. The highs and the lows. So I remember thinking about those things when I was writing.
Awesome. All right, let's listen to it. Here's for Spring Fanfare. Okay, so on Spring Fanfare, we were just listening to it. I like how the snare drum part is rhythmically a little bit more active because we always have that like one or two kids of percussion who are ready for a little bit more than the rest of the grade level. And you were talking about how you like extreme dynamics.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
so it's cool because there's piano and forte with crescendos in between, and then articulation. You were just talking about that uses staccato and what's it called? Accents. That's what it's
Accents.
called. Yeah. Great. So has that been performed?
Yes, that's a pretty popular piece for out of my grade ones. Yeah, my grade ones sell. I have that one and peanut butter jam are my two grade ones. So
Peanut
those
butter
ones,
jam. That sounds
yeah,
awesome.
I get stories from people that say their kids bug them to play it at the end of the year. I enjoy it. I love it.
What's the story behind that piece?
Oh, that is the fault or credit, however you want to look at it, of my friend. His name's Jonathan Bradshaw. He's a band director near me, middle school band director, and everyone jokes and knows I have an unhealthy obsession with peanut butter. And so he wanted me to write a piece, and I don't know who started it. One of us joked that it should be about peanut butter. And he's like, no, I'm serious. Call it, and I'm like, what, peanut butter jam? And he's like, that's exactly what I want. And so I wrote him peanut butter jam.
If people are looking for more peanut butter references, my friend Terry White has a blues with Jalen Publishing called "That's My Peanut Butter Cup."
Excellent.
That's a great chart. All right, next we're going to go to a grade 1.5 articulate march. Good focus on articulations, accents, staccato, slurs, key of B flat and F, and there's a good challenging snare part on this. So, what's the story behind this? Why was it written?
Well, I mentioned I was an assistant marching band director for a while, about 8 years, and I kept noticing there'd be a handful of students every year that were entering high school, and they did not know how to tongue. Like they were using just their air to do everything. They weren't using their tongue at all, and they really struggled because I harped on articulation because I wrote their show music and I was teaching them their show music. And I'm really big on articulation, especially in marching band where you need it to be clean. And so I was having to take these students aside and teach them how to articulate basically because they didn't learn for whatever reason. Um, and so I got frustrated. But I'm gonna write a march and I'm gonna make sure it's about articulation.
That's
And there
perfect.
it
I
is.
mean,
Yeah.
everybody's got to work on it. So it's
Right.
great when you highlight a specific concept and you say, in this piece, we are working on this.
Hmm.
Makes it very black and white for students.
Yeah.
All right, let's listen to it. Here's Articulate March. Okay, so we were just noticing on that one that that's written for 6 percussionists. Seems like there's lots to do there. Some of those offbeats, man. So here's the thing I do when if I have a student who has to play offbeats on the snare drum and they struggle with it, I just have them play eighth notes, but then put the right hand off the drum.
Oh, nice.
They're like playing in the air, as the rest, and that helps them. And at some point, they got to get away from that, but it helps. Okay, will you tell us about Seeking Solace? This piece is in C minor and D minor.
So this is a grade 2 version of a grade 4 originally piece. So I have a grade 4 called Solace Dance, and it was really popular at one time, and I decided to make a grade 2 version of it, and that's Seeking Solace. And I will tell this one story because I think it's funny, and I still remember it to this day. I was really close to a middle school near me who a lot of these pieces were first written for this school. And I walked in one day and they had played spring fanfare the year before this as 6th graders. And I was asked to come into a 7th grade class because they were working on Seeking Solace. And as I walked in, one of the trumpet players goes, "Hey, aren't you our composer?" And I said, "Yep, that's me." And he goes, this kid, you could tell he was outgoing and hilarious. He goes, "Last year that spring fanfare of yours, I wasn't too sure about it. But this one, you knocked it out of the park." I was like, I'll always remember that. I just thought it was so funny.
Yeah. Well, that's kids will say the funniest things.
Yep. They make me laugh.
I made a note of this that it uses syncopation. And the piece grows from soft to strong through the piece.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to start at about 30 seconds in. Here's Seeking Solace. Would you say that Safely Rest is your most best-selling piece?
Right now, I would say it's a tie between Safely Rest and Bright Shadow Fanfare.
Why should people do Safely Rest?
Well, I mean, I think it's really right on the grade 3 level. And of course, it's all lyrical. So I know some people like to bump it up uh, for lyrical pieces. But in terms of technical demand, range, and those things, it's right at 3. In terms of musicality, you know how that goes. But with this piece, it's there's a lot of depth to it, and that's not the easiest thing to accomplish at a grade 3 level, to be honest with you. Um, it just happened. I didn't really have to try that hard, to be honest. But the piece uses taps and it uses Amazing Grace, and I combined them. And so for that reason, I don't consider it an arrangement. I consider it a new piece because of that combination in there. Um, and students connect with it more than I thought they would. I've done it myself as a conductor at honor bands, and a lot of times students really connect with the piece. The audience, more than anything, connects with the piece. I get a lot of comments about it. I get messages sent sometimes to me, which are very kind, because they're just two very meaningful melodies. And if you don't have one that means something to you, some people even have two of both of them mean something to them. So I get a lot of, that was my grandpa's favorite hymn, and he recently passed away, or something like that. And it means a lot to people. And I remember at the premiere, I was not expecting this. At the premiere, 3 different veterans came up to me after to tell me a story about something with them and taps. And
Wow.
yeah, I was like, I remember thinking, oh, I do not deserve to be hearing this right now. This is this is an honor to be hearing the story, that they feel comfortable just having heard a piece I wrote to tell me that. So I'm glad it means a lot to people. That's really why I wrote it.
Yeah, so I bought it and I'm going to use it in the fall. What I like about it is it the space that you give the melodies. It's not rushed in any way. There's times where I think I know what's coming. It's like, oh, okay, that's not what's coming. And I look at them like, oh, that's so much better than what I thought was coming. So there's like an expansiveness to it. Is it like what, 6.5 minutes?
Yeah, it depends on how fast you take it.
Yeah,
It's can go anywhere between 5 and 6.
yeah. And if again, I don't have it in front of me, it's an E flat throughout. Is that true?
Oh gosh, you're
Well,
asking a lot of me.
I mean the key center, it doesn't modulate, does it?
Knowing me, I probably did at some point.
Okay.
It's probably B flat and E flat,
Okay.
maybe something else in there. I like to modulate.
It just seems like a piece where the kids can just get rid of notes and rhythms and they can
Yeah,
just be expressive from the very beginning. And you're right. And there's also something spiritual about the piece. It's just very deep, deep in its simplicity, which again, simple music sometimes is the best. So we're gonna play a segment of this. Here is Safely Rest. Okay, so the next piece we're going to listen to, we're at the grade 4 level now. Be Still and Still Moving. What is the concept behind the title and the composition?
well, this is one of my more recent grade 4s. And I mentioned this earlier. So this is a remake of my first ever piece for band. And I don't normally do that, but that one was special to me for a number of reasons that I decided to do it. Now, the title, I love paradox, and the idea of having to hold opposing things in one hand. And it's just that idea of being surrendered or being at peace and content with things, and at the same time not being. So needing to move forward and work hard and effort. And there's so many different ways I could go about explaining how it came to be, but the first piece, it was truly just a wind ensemble piece. Uh, Later, I and it uses "Be Still My Soul" in the piece as the backbone of it. I wrote a marching band show years later that also used "Be Still My Soul," and meaningful for both me, the director, and the students involved. And I thought, I'm going to combine them. I'm going to put them together. I'm going to make a brand new concert piece out of this, and that is "Be Still and Still Moving."
All right, let's check it out. And you were mentioning that could work well as an ending piece.
Yeah, I conducted it with a group nearby, and we closed the concert with it. I suppose you could put it in the middle as well, since it's only 7 minutes, but it does end big.
Yep. Okay, next piece we're going to do is a grade 5, Beauty Broken. This is a 10-minute piece, and we're going to play about a minute and a half or so. What's this piece about?
This is one of my earliest wind ensemble pieces. I wrote it back in 2015-ish. It's so I went to the Museum of Art near me, and there was an artist on display. His name is Ori Gersh, and there was this photograph, and it totally caught my attention because, well, I didn't know what it was at first, but what it ended up being was a vase of flowers being blown up, and the photograph captured the moment when that was happening. So you just see these flowers like being exploded, the vase going everywhere, and it looks so cool. And then when I actually started thinking about it, I was like, oh, there's a lot of depth to this idea of beauty and brokenness being together, and how it relates to our lives and the world. And at the time, I wasn't writing a lot still for large ensemble. And I was sitting there like, I need to write a piece about this. And I sat in the art museum with my sketchbook like a weirdo. And I was trying to make it work for something like, percussion ensemble or something, because I was trying to be easy on myself at the time. And I just kept thinking, no, this is much bigger than this. You need to make it a full ensemble piece. And so I gave in and wrote Beauty Broken. And this is the first piece I remember getting to the end and going, I like this. Yeah.
Mm.
I'm really happy with this piece. So
What's the structure of the piece?
Oh gosh, it's through composed, I would say.
Okay.
So it starts with a chorale. It starts with beauty, what I call the beauty chorale, and then the break moment happens. So there's actually a glass break moment, which we can discuss all the various ways.
How do you do that?
Well, thankfully, conductors are kind to me and reach out about this to tell me their ideas. Ed Prossman was one. So he recently did it, and the way he did it was he had the student put multiple wind chimes on the bass drum, and then hit the bass drum, and it sounds like glass breaking.
Okay.
If you do that, another way, the University of Toronto, I have this one listed on my website if people want the actual details, but they use like shell wind chimes. They didn't hit it anything. They had the moment in the way the pieces, because I have various percussion things to help them, like the hit. But then the something about those shell wind chimes, the way they did it, it sounded like little pieces of glass falling, and that I think worked really well. And the third option that some people do is they use an electronic sound just for that moment.
So the segment we're going to listen to is in the final sections of the piece, like 7.5 minutes in or so. So that's why I want to talk about that, because when obviously you have this longer work and it's all important, and we're only getting like a small snapshot of it. So,
right. It's easily found online. So
all right, so here's Beauty Broken. Okay, the final piece we're going to do is a grade 6, and you were talking about this with Arizona State University, right? Sunflower Studies. This was just done in 2013. It is 24 minutes long and 4 movements. So we're not going to listen to all of that. People can check that out. Lots of different places. We're doing an excerpt of the second movement. Tell us about the 5 movements.
Yeah, so this piece, when I got the commission and the request and the opportunity, I knew I wanted it to be a big work. And the thing about me is I have so many non-musical ideas that I want to explore at some point. And, some lend themselves to bigger pieces and some lend themselves to smaller. And I was thinking about the ones that lend themselves to bigger pieces. And at the time, this was the one that stood out to me because it was the brightest. And at the time, I know I needed to write a piece that was not too dark, something on the brighter side. And I felt that other people needed it too, because this commission came around the time as we were getting out into the world again after COVID and everything. And so I just wanted something that was positive, optimistic, something completely against my personality in some ways, but it was good for me. And so the concept is, first of all, combining two loves of mine. So sunflowers and I think they're a great metaphor for hope and faith, and Van Gogh, who also loved sunflowers. And when I was deciding to become a composer, um, and struggling with meaning and finding meaning behind what I'm doing, I decided to study art history. And as I was studying art history, I was also developing my own personal philosophy of why I write and how I write. And as I was studying, the artist that hit the nail on the head for me was Van Gogh in terms of his style. And I felt like I related to him in a music way. And so the piece is set up so that movement 1 and 2 kind of go together, and then there's an interlude, and then movement 4 and 5 go together. So movement 1 is me meditating on the nature of the sunflower. Movement 2 is dealing with Van Gogh. So movement 2 in this case is no blue without yellow, two colors he really, really liked to combine. And then movement 4, again, nature of the sunflower. It's called Seeking the Golden Light. And then movement 5, broken colors, deals with Van Gogh style again.
So we're going to be listening to a segment of movement 2, right? There's no blue without yellow. So before we listen to that, is there a message you might want to leave with band directors?
Sure. So, I mean, first of all, we're in this together. I adore what you do. I think what you do is so important. I'm enough of a teacher to know what you go through. I've been very close to a number of band directors, and I see the things you deal with every day, and I have so much respect for what you do for students and other human beings, and that you use music as the vehicle to do that. That's what I'm all about, and I know that's what you're all about. And I just want to say, I mean, thank you for playing composers that are alive. We love that. We love connecting with you. So don't be afraid to reach out to us about anything. And we love the collaboration. We love hearing about you and your students. So I guess that's all I can say really is thank you.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Again, thank you for making time for being here, and happy to promote all of this great stuff you do. Here is the excerpt from Sunflower Studies. We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to the Growing Band Director. See you next week.